An 81-year-old veteran sat quietly in a diner, sipping coffee. Then a biker stormed in and slapped him across the face. The room froze. But just 22 minutes later, the doors opened again, and his son walked in, with the US Army behind him. Harold Jameson wasn't just any old man. At 81 years old, he had lived through more than most could imagine. A Korean War veteran, decorated for his service, Harold carried himself with quiet dignity. His favorite place was Miller's Diner, a small roadside spot where he drank his morning coffee and read the newspaper every single day. Everyone in town knew Harold. They respected his service, admired his resilience, but one man didn't care, and on one fateful morning, that disrespect would spark an unforgettable chain of events. The bell above the diner door jingled as a biker gang walked in, loud, rowdy, and dripping with arrogance. At the front was a man named Tank, a massive figure with tattoos crawling up his arms and a sneer that told the world he feared nothing. Tank spotted Harold sitting alone at his corner booth. Maybe it was Harold's age. Maybe it was the quiet way he ignored the chaos. Or maybe Tank simply needed someone to humiliate. Whatever the reason, he walked straight to Harold's table. "What are you looking at, old man?" Tank barked, slamming his fist on the table. Harold didn't answer. He just folded his paper calmly. That silence infuriated Tank. And then, in front of the entire diner, Tank slapped Harold hard across the face. The diner went silent. Forks froze mid-air. Coffee cups stopped halfway. To lips. No one moved. No one spoke. The room was thick with disbelief. Harold's cheek reddened, but his expression didn't change. He simply looked up at Tank, eyes steady, voice calm. "Son, you've just made the worst mistake of your life." Tank laughed. "What's an old fossil like you gonna do about it?" He strutted back to the counter, his gang roaring with laughter. But Harold didn't flinch. Instead, he reached slowly into his pocket, pulled out an old flip phone and made a single call. "It's Dad," Harold said into the phone. "I'm at Miller's. I need you here." That was all. No anger, no yelling, just quiet certainty. Tank smirked from across the room. "Calling the cops, Grandpa?" he sneered. Harold didn't answer. He just sipped his coffee again, as if nothing had happened. Minutes ticked by. Tank and his crew mocked Harold, tossing fries across the room, daring anyone to stand up to them. But the other customers stayed silent. They didn't know what Harold had set in motion. At exactly 22 minutes past the slap, the bell above the diner rang again. This time it wasn't Tank's gang walking in. It was a line of men in uniform. Combat boots thudded against the floor, eyes sharp, shoulders squared. At the front of them was a tall man with Harold's same steel-gray eyes, his son, Colonel Jameson of the United States Army. The diner. "Cust!" The soldiers fanned out instantly, moving with precision. Customers whispered in awe, and Tank's smirk finally vanished. Colonel Jameson walked straight to his father, placed a steady hand on his shoulder, then turned to face Tank. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of command. "You laid hands on a veteran. You disrespected my father. And you did it in front of witnesses." Tank tried to bluster, to laugh it off, but the words caught in his throat as 6 soldiers stepped forward in unison, their boots striking the tile like thunder. Tank's gang, once rowdy, now looked like frightened children. The colonel leaned in closer. "You wanted to act tough? Let's see how tough you are when you're not hiding behind your boys." The soldiers didn't lay a hand on Tank. They didn't need to. The sheer presence of discipline, unity, and respect crushed every ounce of bravado he had. Customers cheered softly, nodding in approval. Tank stuttered out an apology, but Harold didn't respond. He didn't need to. The colonel pulled out his phone, and within minutes, real police arrived. Tank and his crew were escorted out, faces pale, laughter long gone. For once, they weren't the ones in control. As the diner returned to life, Harold finished his coffee, folded his paper, and stood tall. The colonel smiled at his father and said, "You raised me to defend what matters. Today, it was my turn to defend you." Harold's eyes softened. "You did good, son." The soldiers left as quietly as they had arrived, but the diner buzzed for days with the story. A slap meant to humiliate an old man had turned into the biker's downfall, and for everyone watching, It was a reminder. Respect is earned, and disrespect has consequences. This story isn't just about a slap or a diner, or even a gang of bikers. It's about legacy, about standing tall even when the world tries to knock you down. Harold's calm dignity was more powerful than Tank's rage. And when the army walked through those doors, it wasn't just his son who stood with him. It was the weight of every lesson Harold had ever taught. So the next time someone disrespects you, remember, sometimes strength doesn't roar back immediately. Sometimes it waits quietly and arrives exactly when it's needed most.